What's up, and welcome back to Gabe at Muller Music. When Akai hit me up about trying out a pre-release device, I was pretty excited. I'm a big fan of the MPC One, and so it got me thinking, could this be a follow-up with a more portable design and a more streamlined user interface? Not quite. But also, kind of. This is not a standalone device. This is a MIDI controller for the MPC software. And this isn't MPC Beats. This is the fully featured MPC software, the computer version of what you see on all of their standalone stuff with all the same features. So this is the MPC Studio. I'm going to show you the unboxing and the beatmaking process with it in a second, but let me just explain what this is and what I think Akai is trying to do with this. The price is, wait for it, $269. So this is definitely a very affordable entry point, either into beatmaking in general or into the MPC format of beatmaking. And like I said, it comes with the fully featured software. And that's actually a really competitive deal. You get this fully featured music production workflow, all these tools, all the latest stuff, and a hardware controller that feels pretty good. It's all plastic, but it's fairly sturdy, and I'm going to get into the hands-on impressions in a second, but it gives you enough hands-on control, at least where it counts. As someone who loves budget music production devices that punch way above their weight, this definitely seems like a good deal to me. But does it actually hold up in regular use? Let's find out. The first thing I immediately noticed holding the box is that it's actually kind of small. It's kind of adorable, so I'm expecting that the device will be even adorabler. So in here, I've got a bunch of stuff actually. 5-pin MIDI to 3.5 millimeter MIDI. That's super nice to have. I've already got like 10 of them, but now I have 2 more. Hey, good on you for including those, Akai. And of course, the USB cable. Disappointed that it's not USB-C, but what are you gonna do? Manual, warranty, software, and of course, styrofoam. Yeah, this guy's little. Here it is. Let's get the box out of here. Wow, these pads are big. Finger for scale. I've got small hands, but what are you gonna do? Pull the little tab off. So this is pretty damn thin, as you can hopefully see. Your I/O, fairly limited, but that's okay. The fact that it even has MIDI stuff is a good sign. I like that they've included that quite a bit. USB port, a little bump for it. It feels light, not flimsy necessarily, but light, which is fine. I have no problem with that. Clicky buttons, get some clicky button SMR. Scroll wheel feels pretty good. Nice little amount of resistance. Feels a lot like the one on the One to me. And yeah, overall, for being a fairly inexpensive device, this does feel pretty solid. You know, it's all plastic and whatnot, and it's still fairly light, but I don't hate it. I can dig it. Let's plug it in. All right, I went through the whole setup process, which took a bit longer than I expected. I had to plug this into the computer, launch their launcher thingy, and from there I was able to install the main software. This is not MPC Beats. This is the full version of the latest MPC software. Installed a couple of sound packs. I'll get back to the rest later. And I had to connect this to my iLok account. You don't need a physical dongle, but you do have to do that little back and forth so that it can authenticate it. From there, I had to double check that I had the latest version of the ASIO drivers installed to make sure I had no latency since I'm running this on a Windows computer. And now I've just gone into the expansions and loaded up an arbitrary pack. So we've got these velocity sensitive pads, and you can actually go in and adjust the sensitivity, which I want to do right now. So go preferences. So now I'm gonna go to hardware and I'm gonna up the sensitivity. 8 is normal. I'm gonna set it to say just 11. Let's just try that. Much better. I'm probably gonna use note repeat for the actual hi-hat rolls, but I like having sensitive enough pads to be able to just finger drum anything out. That's very important to me. So having pads this large is lovely. So these are all blank. So these are the different pad banks that are all living on one drum program. I can set this to full level. So no matter how hard or soft I hit the pads, it'll trigger at the same level. I'm gonna leave that off for now. And then I can go into 16 levels. So this will flash on the screen which pad I've selected and what type. So I'm going to select this to be tune. So this is how you're going to pitch one shots around within the drum program mode. There's going to be a different way to do that with key group programs, which will give you full polyphony and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to get out of this for now. So I'm coming from the MPC1 background, so a lot of this is seeming pretty familiar. Let's do program select. So that's cool. It shows you which programs you got queued up. Let's actually select a program. All right, so I've discovered that if you hit program select again, it'll cycle you through to presets. That's kind of cool. Let's choose something arbitrarily. So this is one case where this is going to be a bit less hands-on than the MPC1. You will have to actually jump into your screen to edit these parameters. So this is one of the built-in synths. You can also use this to activate things like ARP. And over here is where I'll actually change the plugin. Ooh, let's pull up a drum plugin. And once again, you can page through here and start to adjust stuff. Having it all in one screen is pretty nice. So maybe just turn up that snare, turn down that hi-hat. So let's figure out recording. You got record and overdub here, play and play start, exactly like on the standalone MPCs. There was a sample select button in here somewhere. Yeah, this is what I wanted to do. So the hands-on controls on this thing definitely seem optimized for sample-based stuff with a less of an emphasis on more synthesis. Or if you want to do more synthesis-based stuff, you do have to dive into the software itself. And that's just the limitations of something being much more compact, which is totally fine. That's just a different approach. What I want to try now is the touch strip. So now I've set my touch strip to Q-Link. So let's see how that handles it. Yeah, okay, that's cool. I like that use of it. I was honestly a little bit skeptical about the touch strip in the beginning, just because often they can feel like a bit of a gimmick to me. But using this as a way to adjust parameters in a more hands-on way without having a bunch of knobs in here, that's not a bad compromise. If you're going to make something more compact, throw in a touch strip so you can still adjust more of these parameters hands-on and leave this knob free to do other stuff. So what I want to figure out now is how to select a different knob, but what I have noticed is if you hit mode and then hit a different pad, it'll open up, say, the grid, like you just saw, or the waveform, pad mixer. So all that stuff's super accessible. That's nice to have. Sampler. So this is going to be your full sample recording mechanism. Also, I can switch between my banks here as well. Let's just throw in some portamento while I'm at it. Nice. So this has absolutely all the control that the standalone versions have. It's just laid out a bit different, so it'll take me some getting used to, but I can definitely dig it. Last night's session was a fairly scattershot, scatterbrained approach, and today I'm going to take a much more methodical approach to devices, and that's typically how I go with learning these. I'll just jump in with no plan, see what I can figure out, and then from there, take a step back and decide how I want to really approach learning something. So the beauty of this being connected to the software is that, unlike on the standalone devices, you can see the entirety of all the software features laid out before you. I'm going to start out by ignoring a lot of the physical controls on this thing other than the pads, and I'm going to use the software on my computer screen to navigate a lot of the features, because it's all laid out right there before me, and so that'll be a great starting point. From there, I can actually just check against the screen and against the buttons to see what hands-on controls I have access to and slowly start incorporating those until I'm comfortable with using a great hybrid approach. That's the plan anyway, so let's see how it goes. So one thing I did quickly do off camera is figure out how to import sounds. You can't just drag stuff directly in, you've got to go through their own file manager, which is actually pretty damn straightforward. So I've gone into my downloads folder, which has a download of my $5 one-shot sample pack available at the link in the description. Shameless self-plug there. With a bunch of kicks, snares, synth one-shots, hi-hats, bunch of stuff to work with. And I'll often load that up to just test stuff. So here's what's cool about this. If I just select a sound, I can double-click it to load it in. It won't automatically assign it to a pad, which is actually good because I don't want to accidentally override any sounds I already have going on my pads. So now what I can do in terms of the hands-on stuff. It's hard to see for you, but I've got these sounds available to select. If I hit sample select, I can scroll through my available sounds that I've loaded into this project. Super straightforward. And that does remind me a lot of the workflow on the one as well. So that translates pretty nicely. We just get a snare in here. Let's get a hi-hat. Open hi-hat. Sweet. So you'll notice that open hi-hat is definitely louder than I want it to be. So once again, I'm going to lean on the hands-on controls on this thing when I can. So mode, pad mixer. And you'll see on the screen, that has pulled up the full mix between all of these pads. This device feels a lot bigger than it is, which is always nice. It's always nice to feel like you're dealing with this big premium device with these big old pads, but it's still super compact. I could very easily throw this in a backpack. Like I've mentioned earlier, it feels pretty solid, but it's still fairly light. That's a good combination in my book. Obviously, I like something that feels even more premium because I've gotten the chance to use some more expensive stuff, but it feels good. And all that is definitely something I want to draw your attention to. Okay, that's a good combination right now. You'll also notice my inserts laid out. See, this is super well laid out. It's actually a bit more intuitive than it is on the MPC One because the MPC One has that smaller screen to contend with. So you're going to be pushing buttons to get to different windows, whereas on this, everything's a little more spread out. So you've got more to look at once, which might seem more overwhelming, but actually means it's easier to kind of navigate to what you want quicker. These are the same plugins as on the standalone stuff. Like this is the same experience. So here's before, after. It's subtle. I might want to add another one of some sort. Ooh, here we go. Oh, hear that transient? Very nice. So I want to try to shorten this a little bit. So let's hit mode again. Sample edit. I love the addition of the mode button. That's very nice. So if I choose this takes me to my main program edit, which is what I want right now. So here's where I've got all my amp stuff. So what I want to do, first of all, shorten that snare a little bit, and I can get something a little more in depth. There's filter stuff. I'm not going to worry about that too much right now. I also have access to my pad level and pan in here, just so you know. That's nice to have. So you've got a few different options for how to deal with this stuff. And I can layer samples in here as well if I want. I'm not going to for the moment, but that is a thing that you have access to. That can be incredibly powerful. I might actually play with the pitch envelope of this a little bit. That could be kind of neat. Okay, so that's a lot tighter now in terms of how my drums are sounding. I can probably also go in and do a bit of processing on this entire program. Yeah, that's what I want in life. Just throw a compressor on this whole damn thing. Woo! So that's probably a bit much, so I'll crank the mix down. That sounds fine. I'll probably adjust this later, but you get the idea. Okay, up next, let's tap a tempo. Okay, that's going to be about 140, so I'll just set that manually. That's on a sequence by sequence basis. I want to get to my sequence settings. Oh, there is a step sequencer in this. I just noticed that. Excellent. Okay, so right now I'm in my main view. Here is my sequence. So I'm just going to up this to 4 bars. And the BPM is set to what I want it to be. That will loop and all that kind of stuff. I've got some track information here. I'm not going to worry about that right now. I just want to record something. So let's just hit overdub. It's a good start. Let me actually get another hi-hat in here. This is where I want to activate the note repeat. And actually, before I do that, I want to get rid of this, open hi-hat right here. So I'm going to hit mode, go to my step sequencer. Get rid of that. I like that that's in here. 2, 3. I like how the timing correct is handling this. For some reason, it actually seems to handle this a little more cleanly than it does on the MPC One. What I would like to try to do, now that I've saved this so I can go back on it if it breaks, I'd like to try to automate the pitch of these hi-hat rolls a little bit. So I've got an automation button here. All right, so automation is set to right, so I need to remember to turn this off or else it's going to break things. So this, I should be able to just like that. That would be pretty neat. Let's just try it. Let me turn that off. Nice. All right, so up next, let's try to add a key group program using some of my own custom sounds. So I'm just gonna hop into pad here because I've got some nice sounds in here. I'm just gonna load in a bunch of these and then I'll figure out which one I actually wanna use in a second. And while I'm at it, I'm just gonna load in a couple of 808s. I can go to my track select. I'm gonna do this hands-on. And then I can select my track type with shift. Boom. Also, I can change my scale here. I'm gonna change that to, let's just call it a natural minor for now. I can always change it later. And I've got my different options for chords, chromatic notes. I'm gonna keep it on just notes for now and let it lock it to a scale. And now, sample select. So this is my first layer of sample. So yeah, it sure is tuning that stuff. I'm gonna have to adjust how that behaves in a second here. Let me just go to my second layer. Dude! See, I was a little skeptical about just how hands-on this was going to be, and in some aspects it isn't. But it's got the hands-on stuff where it really counts. And I like how it's dealt with it. I genuinely do. Like, it's won me over a bit. That actually sounds pretty dope. Let me just record something. Nice. So now I can go to my track mixer, or channel mixer rather. So that's this track. I want to do some effects on this entire thing, starting with some parametric EQ because that low end is a bit much. So let's just scroll all the way over to this other window. Cut some lows, maybe boost some highs a little bit. Modulation. Love me some chorus. Gotta remember to leave room for sidechain. It's like it's a meal. I'll get to that in a second. What about some reverb? What about a spring reverb? Been on a spring reverb kick lately. So I'm just gonna load the sidechain plugin onto here for now. And then I can go to my track select track 1, and then hit mode, pad mixer. See, I'm getting the hang of this. For speed, dynamics, ducker input. There's the duck. And all its adorable, edgy little glory. Channel mixer. Off to a good start. This is going really well. I'm finding that the switch from standalone to this format is growing on me pretty quickly. Like, standalone is always going to be my first love just because I love standalone stuff. But I'm getting the hang of this, and it's definitely winning me over to be like, yeah, I can dig it. All right, so next, track select again. Whoopsies. MIDI tracks is what I want. Track 3, which is unused. Let's hit shift, track type. This too will be a key group. Okay, so now program 3, which is new. So this one I'm going to treat a little bit differently. First of all, I immediately want to get into 808. Whoa, glide territory. I want to adjust the amp. Just got off that attack because I don't want the transients to fight. And I do not want this to be polyphonic. Program polyphony. Excellent. Now I'm going to go to channel mixer. Throw some distortion on this guy. Ew. messed up a note there, but you get the idea. So I've gotten back into made mode, and I'm just gonna fix a couple of these notes manually. And also, while I'm at it, let's go back into the track mixer. I want to go to my main outputs and throw a limiter on here because I hear stuff clipping a little bit. So that's making a super basic beat. There's a ton more stuff in here that I want to quickly run through, but the main thing that I really want to put through its paces is this implementation of Autosampler. But first of all, let me just show you a couple of other cool things like chords. You've got a bunch of control over the type of chord. That's fun. Maybe a little over the top for this patch, but you get the idea. And if I hold down note repeat, I can also turn on ARP. That's a little hard to hear with this patch, so let's go in and edit it real quick, and I'm just going to close this without saving afterwards because I just want to show you how this works. Turn down my release a little bit. I've confused it. You can see how you can basically turn samples into things that behave like synths. And I should be able to go into my note repeat settings and change it to, say, 16. Also, one thing that this has that makes it stand out from its main competition, which would be the Machine Micro, is the fact that this has built-in sample chopping. And I want to try that out next, and then we'll get into auto sampling, which is the other big thing that makes this extremely competitive. Just in general, it's one of my favorite features, and I'm really curious to see if this can handle it well. This is not a particularly percussive sample, in that it isn't percussive at all, but I just want to use this to test this feature real quick here. Oh, I also forgot to mention that they're the individual drum effects, which are separate from the insert effects. You have less control over them, but you can select them and just do quick little adjustments. So you've got a bunch of layers of effects. Like I said, shaping samples to be unrecognizable is one of my favorite ways of working with this thing. You've also got LFOs in here, a bunch of stuff I'm not going to dive into right now, but you've got options for days. So here are some settings for your slices. Link slices, I typically like to turn off personally. There's some process samples stuff, so now I just need to figure out how to initiate the actual chopping process. Okay, so let's go into sample edit mode. As you can see, I have link slices to turn off. So let's hit chop. Super easy. That's way easier than I was expecting it to be in terms of setting it up. So I should be able to export this to its own drum program. Here we go. So sample to pad. Do it. Obviously, this is a horrible sample to demonstrate this with, but hopefully you get the idea. Super straightforward, and you've got all these other functions to deal with as well. So that's very promising for working with an easy sample chopping setup with the interfacing between a DAW setup and this piece of hardware. I can dig it. All right, it took some time for me to get the MIDI working, but now that it does work, I can show you how I've got this set up. So I've got my Arturia Microfreak here, and if I hit a note on the MPC, it triggers a note on the Microfreak, which is what you're hearing right now. The way I've got this set up is I've got one of the converters that came with the MPC running into a standard sized MIDI cable, and then that is running through another converter into the Microfreak. Now, I tried just a small tipped cable the entire way, and for whatever reason, that didn't work. Despite the fact that the tips appear the same, they are not the same. And this little guy does work. This cable, despite the fact that I've had it work for other MIDI stuff, did not work for this. I needed a properly sized MIDI cable. So once I figured that out, it was actually pretty easy to set up. These are my MIDI settings. I'm just making sure that the MPC Studio is outputting MIDI through its MIDI jack. And once I got that going, it just flippin' works. So that's great. That's exactly where I need this to be. And then in this case, I've just got a cheap little aux cable running out of the headphone out of the Microfreak directly into the mic in on my computer. If I wanted higher quality audio, I would use this audio interface, but in this case, I could not be bothered to set that up because this is just a quick demo to see if I can even get this feature to work, which I can. Although I've not actually run the Autosampler with this sync working. But now that I've got the Studio controlling the Microfreak, I can actually go in and run the Autosampler. To actually run the Autosampler, go to the hamburger menu up here, go to Tools, Autosampler. You've got a bunch of different settings here. I want to make sure that record from input 1 and 2 is active. I can select my note range. I'm going to keep it fairly limited for now, but I could extend this if I wanted to. Note stride is how many notes it'll skip as it samples notes. So it might do a C, and then it'll go up 6 semitones, get another note, so on and so forth. That's what I understand it to be. I always leave extend min-max notes checked, so it'll just pitch that stuff further up and further down beyond what this stuff is set to. That's fine. I can do velocity layers. I'm not going to at the moment, but that is super nice to have for more realism. Note length, I'm going to, let's say two-ish seconds. Close enough. I'll leave the tail at a second. That should be fine. This is a fairly short, stabby little sound. I can change the name if I want to. Enable looping, I'm going to turn that off, which I typically like to turn that off for this. Auto trim start, sure. Other than that, let's just hit do it. You can hear that this guy has auto triggering Microfreak notes. So that's almost done. And now let me turn this all the way down. I can even disconnect it entirely, but I'm not going to bother for the moment. Track select. Select an unused track, program select, and this is the Freak patch, so theoretically, this is the sampled version. And you'll notice it cuts off because I haven't gone in and adjusted the release yet. And now it's polyphonic. So now I can go into program edit, for instance. I can grab the amp envelope, crank the release, and there's a way to select a bunch of the samples all at once. But right now, I'll just do this the quick and dirty way. And then I could do something like set my scale and some chords. So now, that works pretty well. There's a weird little bit of distortion going on. I'd have to refine this a little bit, but hopefully you see how powerful that can be. This is very similar to how it works on the standalone devices. It's great to see that they've implemented that here pretty damn smoothly. If you'd like to see more first impressions of music production devices, you can click or tap up over here. And if you'd like to see my full review of the MPC One, which is the standalone, more expensive version of all this, you can click or tap down over here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back with a new video in a little bit.